Hello. We are starting Shakespeare today, and that makes me very happy because I love Shakespeare. So we're going to go quickly through some of the details of his life and a little bit about this play we're about to watch. Or, I'm sorry, hopefully you'll get to watch it, but that we're about to read. Okay, we don't know for sure that Shakespeare's birthday is April 23rd, but what we do know is that he was baptized on April 26th, 1564, and generally at the time, baptism was done 3 days after birth. So we're assuming that it was April 23rd, and that's when we always celebrate Shakespeare's birthday. He was born in Stratford-on-Avon. If you can see there, Stratford's in a little darker letters, and it's on the River Avon there in England. All right. My slide isn't wanting to change, but we'll fix that. All right. So this is Shakespeare's actual gravestone. It is still there, available to see. Thousands of visitors go by to see his gravestone. It doesn't have his name on it, but they know it's his. He died April 23rd, 1616, so you'll notice he died on his birthday in Stratford-on-Avon, same place he was born, and he's buried in the church there. 2 years ago was the 400th anniversary of his death, and the first archaeological investigation of his grave was conducted in honor of it. Now, they used ground-penetrating radar rather than more invasive methods, and what they found was not conclusive, but it does seem to indicate that there's no coffin, the body is wrapped in a shroud, and there'd been a story around since about 1879 that Shakespeare's skull had been stolen in the 1700s. It appears that may be true. They were not able to see a skull with the body. Now, grave robbing was well known at that time, so it was kind of a creepy hobby maybe that some people would want to collect the skulls of famous people. So that may have happened to his body at the time. He was brought up and educated in Stratford. His father was kind of a minor town official, and he would have learned to read and write English and say the catechism from the parish clerk. But once you had learned that, you would go on to grammar school, which was Latin grammar. We sometimes use the word grammar school now, or people used to, for elementary school. But grammar school was where you learned Latin, Latin, and more Latin. Sometimes 8 hours a day, 6 days a week. And at that time, the comment has been made in some history books that beatings were an integral part of learning Latin. So he may have grown up learning a lot of Latin and getting a lot of beatings. Who knows? After he got out of school, we have kind of a lost period in his life from 1578 until 1582. We don't know what happened in there. Then we pick up his life in 1585 because he got married. And then till 1592, we see some records, some children born. And then we don't see, I'm sorry, from 1585 to 1592 is the lost time. That's what I was saying. And 1585 is when his twins were born. We don't see him again till 1592 when he's already living in London as a actor. So it's kind of interesting. We have him up till his school days, then we have this little short period of 1582 to 1585 where we do know what he was doing, then we lose him again until he becomes the famous playwright. All right, still having trouble getting my slides to change. He married Anne Hathaway on November 27th, 1582. She was 26, he was about 18, so she was older than him. She was from a very respectable Puritan family, a family that had also come from some amount of money. She didn't particularly come from that branch, but the family was a well-known family. Their first child was born 6 months later, which tells you why they kind of seem to have speeded the wedding up a bit from what would have been the normal procedure. And then in 1585, the twins, Hamnet and Judith, were born. Hamnet later dies at 11. The two daughters live to adulthood. And once these twins are born, again, Shakespeare kind of disappears until he appears again in London full blown. He may have been there living with them and working his way, up through the theater crowd. He may have left immediately to try to find a job to support these children. We just don't know. We don't have any records that show what he was doing. But then in 1592, records of him appear again, working in London with Richard Burbage, who was the most famous actor at the time, who was also a theater owner. Now, actors at the time had to be good at sword fighting because there was a lot of sword fighting in not only Shakespeare's plays, but all the plays of the time. They had to be good at acrobatics. They were quite often swinging in from some place on the stage, or coming down from the heavens, or going down into beneath the stage. They would consider that hell. Just kind of, there was a lot of flying around on the stage. So they had to be good at that. They had to be good at dancing and declaiming. Dancing because there was quite often after the show a song and dance, sometimes in the middle of some of them. We don't see them recorded as parts of the play, but the theater goers would have expected some song and dance. And of course, the actors had to make themselves heard without any kind of electronic amplification to the very highest boxes of the theater. So they had to be very good at projecting their voice. Now, after his career, he had acquired quite a bit of money. Shakespeare returned to Stratford and died. He retired from the theater about 1611. So he wasn't ancient or anything. He wasn't elderly. He moved back to Stratford-on-Avon and died in 1616. He left £300 to the daughter Judith, and then his older daughter Susanna, he left the bulk of his estate, which by this time had grown. Not only did he have shares in the theater and have whatever he would have made as a playwright, but he had speculated in other things. There's evidence that he would buy up grain and hold it till the prices went up on it. He had bought real estate around Stratford-on-Avon. He was a good businessman, and so he had quite a bit of money. But he left it to his daughter, not his wife. He left his wife the second best bed. Nobody knows why. We don't know what that means. We don't know if that was maybe the bed they'd always used. Maybe there's speculation that he and his wife did not get along very well because he always lived in London and she lived in Stratford-on-Avon. We don't know if that's true. We don't know what that's about, but it makes for a kind of a funny thing to think about. And so then Anne probably lived with Susanna until her death. Susanna or Judith, neither one had any children that lived, or so he was very concerned about having this family line, and it just didn't actually ever happen for him. Now, just for the fun of it, I've added in this chart that shows all the different ways that people die in Shakespeare plays. Now, no one dies. We're doing a comedy. We're not doing a tragedy. So we're not worried about people dying. But if you read a Shakespeare tragedy, by the end, you have very few people left alive. Pretty much everyone's dead. And you can see all the different ways. He likes to poison people. He likes to stab people. He likes to stab people a lot. Drown people. Smothered by a pillow. We have someone who died from lack of sleep. Someone who was blinded. We have in Titus Andronicus, 2 people were baked into a pie. In Julius Caesar, we have someone who was ripped apart by the mob. We have buried up to the neck till they died of starvation. We have people dying of indigestion. It's just amazing if you read the Shakespeare tragedies, all the different ways that he kills people off. Some of them pretty weird. We, however, are looking at a comedy. In fact, it's called The Comedy of Errors. This is a play about twins and mistaken identity. We have a rich aristocrat whose wife bears him a set of twins, and at the same time, there is a peasant woman who has a set of twins. The aristocrat buys her twins to be the servants and companions to his twins. This is not weird or uncommon at the time. There was still slavery and that kind of thing. And so he has the 2 sons, and then he has these other 2 twins that are supposed to be the servants to the sons. However, they are on a ship, and there is a shipwreck. The wife takes off with 1 son and 1 servant. The husband takes off with the other son and the other servant, and they never see each other again until they go looking for each other and end up in the same town. And then we have, of course, two sets of identical twins, and you can imagine the hijinks and the shenanigans that go on as they are constantly being recognized as each other. They can't figure out what's going on. No one else can figure out what's going on. Lots of comedy. This is slapstick humor. This is the kind of like, you know, slip on a banana peel kind of humor. There's not a lot of highbrow kind of writing here. This is meant to be funny. And this is what's important to remember about Shakespeare. Shakespeare was writing for the common people. He was not writing for the aristocrats. The aristocrats did come to his plays. He performed his plays for the king. It was King James at the time. And but he was writing for everyone, and everyone would come to the theater. You would have the people called the groundlings who would pay their couple pennies and get to stand on the ground and watch the plays. And if they didn't like the actors, they didn't like what was going on, they would throw things at the stage. There were a number of theaters, and people, this was one of the main forms of entertainment in London. People went to a lot of plays, and they would throw tomatoes at the actors and eggs at the actors if they didn't like it. Today we've made Shakespeare into something that feels like it's very sophisticated and very cultural, and only people who are well educated go to see it. But the truth of the matter is, it was the common people. It was the blockbuster movies of the day. It was like going to see a Marvel movie now. So it wasn't, as you're reading it, remember, this was meant to be a play that everyone enjoyed, and everyone would come pay money for, and everyone would laugh at. So it's not meant to be sophisticated or something that's not accessible to everyone. As we go through this unit, there are two things that you should not say in your discussion board posts or in your journals. First of all, you should not say that Shakespeare was writing in Old English. Shakespeare did not write Old English. This picture here is Old English, and you can't read it, and neither can I, because basically Old English is like another language, and you have to be an expert in Old English to read it. If you're familiar with The Lord of the Rings or The Hobbit, Tolkien was an expert in Old English and took a lot of The Hobbit from Beowulf. And we also can't even read Middle English today. Very few people can read these, only the people that go and study it particularly. Shakespeare wrote in early modern English. So don't ever say Shakespeare was writing in Old English. That is untrue, and it doesn't characterize it correctly. These are all words you know, even if you're thinking, well, I don't quite understand them in the way he put them. They are all common words. In fact, so many of the words we use today were created by Shakespeare. If he didn't have a word, he just made one up, and they became part of the English language. So it might take you a while to slip into hearing it. Give yourself a chance to read it and catch on, and I'll try to tell you some versions to watch too. But give yourself a chance in it. Don't give up on it. Now I have another one here. I'm not sure why they didn't number correctly, but they are both important. I don't want to hear anyone say or read anyone say I hate Shakespeare, because very few people anymore give Shakespeare enough of a chance to know whether they like it or don't. They just either might have had one bad experience in high school, one bad play or something, and that they didn't enjoy, and so they'll immediately say I hate Shakespeare without enough knowledge to know whether they like it or not. So give yourself a chance to understand it. Give yourself a chance to read it. If you watch a version of it, watch it with the caps on so you can see the words with it, and I will list a couple of them on our page. All right, well, I hope you enjoy the week, and I hope you enjoy the Shakespeare.